America's story begins long before the United States was even imagined. Thousands of years ago, long before Columbus set sail, the land we call America was home to diverse native tribes, each with their own cultures, languages, and traditions. From the Iroquois in the northeast to the Navajo in the southwest, from the Sioux on the Great Plains to the Cherokee in the south, this vast continent thrived with rich civilizations. But in 1492, everything began to change. Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World opened the gates for European conquest. Soon, the Spanish, French, Dutch, and British began carving out colonies. Gold, land, and power drove them westward, while disease and war devastated native communities. By the 1600s, the British had established the 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast. Jamestown in Virginia became the first permanent English settlement in 1607. New England grew with Puritans seeking religious freedom. The colonies became a land of opportunity, yet also a land built on slavery. In 1619, the first enslaved Africans arrived in Virginia, setting the stage for centuries of racial injustice. As decades passed, tension grew between the colonies and Britain. Colonists wanted self-rule, but London demanded taxes and obedience. The Boston Tea Party of 1773 was a bold act of defiance, a spark that ignited revolution. In 1776, the colonists declared independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Thomas Jefferson's words echoed across the world. The American Revolution was born. Farmers, merchants, and ordinary citizens took up arms against the mighty British Empire. Against all odds, the colonies won. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris recognized the United States of America as a new nation. But independence was just the beginning. The young country faced chaos. How would it govern itself? After bitter debates in 1787, the U.S. Constitution was written, a bold experiment in democracy. George Washington became the nation's first president. Setting precedents still followed today. Yet, even as liberty was celebrated, freedom was not for all. Slavery remained legal in the South, and Native Americans were pushed from their lands. The seeds of future conflict were already being planted. The 1800s brought expansion. Through the Louisiana Purchase, the U.S. doubled in size. The concept of manifest destiny fueled a belief that America was destined to spread coast to coast. Explorers like Lewis and Clark mapped the frontier. Settlers moved westward, chasing land and gold. But this expansion meant the forced removal of native tribes. The Trail of Tears became a symbol of America's darkest promises. Then came war. The War of 1812 against Britain tested the young nation's resolve. Later, war with Mexico brought vast new territories, Texas, California, and the Southwest. But as America grew, the question of slavery grew louder. Would new states be free or slave? The nation was being torn in two. By the 1860s, the divide could no longer be contained. The election of Abraham Lincoln triggered Southern states to secede. The Civil War erupted, the deadliest conflict in American history. Brother fought against brother, North against South, freedom against bondage. In 1863, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation declared enslaved people in Confederate states free. 2 years later, the Union triumphed. Slavery was abolished, but at a tremendous cost. Over 600,000 lives lost. The war ended, but America's wounds ran deep. Reconstruction tried to rebuild the South and secure rights for freed slaves, but racism and violence persisted. Meanwhile, the late 1800s brought rapid change. The Industrial Revolution transformed America into an economic powerhouse. Railroads stretched across the continent. Immigrants arrived by the millions, fueling cities and factories. The Statue of Liberty welcomed them to a new life, but poverty and struggle awaited many. By 1900, America had risen from a fragile experiment to a global giant. But the 20th century would test it in ways no one could imagine. The dawn of the 20th century brought both promise and peril for America. Industry boomed. Skyscrapers pierced the skyline of New York and Chicago. Henry Ford's assembly line put cars on the roads, transforming daily life. Immigrants poured into Ellis Island, Italians, Irish, Jews, Poles, each chasing the American dream. But with growth came inequality. Slums filled with struggling families, while tycoons like Rockefeller, Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan amassed unimaginable wealth. America was rising, but not everyone rose with it. By 1914, the world was plunged into war. World War I erupted in Europe, but America at first stayed out. President Woodrow Wilson insisted on neutrality. Yet German U-boats sank American ships, and the infamous Zimmermann telegram revealed German attempts to incite Mexico against the U.S. By 1917, America could no longer stand aside. American troops crossed the Atlantic. "The Yanks are coming," the Allies cheered. In muddy trenches, young Americans fought and died. In 1918, the war ended. Wilson dreamed of a League of Nations, but at home, isolationism took hold. America wanted peace, prosperity, and to look inward. The 1920s became the Roaring Twenties, an age of jazz, flappers, radios, and booming stock markets. Cities glittered with electricity. Prohibition banned alcohol, but speakeasies thrived, and gangsters like Al Capone ruled the underworld. The American dream felt unstoppable, but dreams can shatter overnight. In October 1929, Wall Street crashed. The Great Depression gripped the nation. Banks collapsed, farms failed, and millions lost jobs. Bread lines stretched through city streets. Dust storms ravaged the Midwest. Desperation spread across the land. Into this darkness came Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Elected in 1932, FDR promised a New Deal. He expanded government power, built dams, created jobs, and gave hope to the unemployed. Fireside chats on the radio reassured Americans that recovery was possible. Just as the nation began to heal, another storm gathered abroad. In the 1930s, Hitler rose in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, militarists in Japan. Fascism spread like wildfire. War was coming again. In 1939, World War II exploded. Once more, America hesitated. Memories of World War I still haunted the people. But on December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Battleships burned. Thousands died. President Roosevelt's voice thundered, a date which will live in infamy. America was at war. Factories turned into war machines. Women worked as Rosie the Riveters. Soldiers stormed beaches from North Africa to Normandy. In the Pacific, brutal island battles raged. Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Guadalcanal. By 1945, the Allies closed in. Hitler was dead. Nazi Germany surrendered. But in the Pacific, Japan fought on. President Harry Truman faced a terrible choice. In August, atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The world had entered the nuclear age. Japan surrendered. The war was over. But America was changed forever. No longer just a nation. It was now a superpower. Yet with victory came a new enemy, the Soviet Union. And so began the Cold War. When the guns of World War II fell silent, America stood taller than ever. Its cities were untouched by bombs, its industries boomed, and its military stretched across oceans. Yet victory also brought a shadow, the Soviet Union. Two superpowers, two visions for the future. Capitalism and democracy on one side, communism and dictatorship on the other. The stage was set for the Cold War. The Cold War begins. Winston Churchill warned of an Iron Curtain descending across Europe. Stalin tightened his grip on the East, while the U.S. launched the Marshall Plan, pouring billions into rebuilding Western Europe. Berlin became the first flashpoint. In 1948, Stalin blockaded the city. America answered with the Berlin airlift, flying food and supplies for nearly a year until the Soviets backed down. Soon, NATO and the Warsaw Pact split the world into two hostile camps. By the 1950s, the arms race began. America and the Soviet Union built nuclear arsenals capable of ending humanity in minutes. The space race followed. Sputnik, Yuri Gagarin, and, finally, America's triumph in 1969, Neil Armstrong's first steps on the moon. The Civil Rights Era. But while America projected strength abroad, at home it faced deep injustice. African Americans, long oppressed by segregation, rose in the Civil Rights Movement. Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat. Martin Luther King Jr. led marches with words that still echo, "I have a dream." Despite violence, arrests, and assassinations, change came. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 dismantled legal segregation. America was beginning to live closer to its founding promise, that all are created equal. Vietnam and turmoil. Yet the Cold War dragged America into conflicts far from home. In Vietnam, U.S. troops fought to stop communism. But the war dragged on, bloody and unpopular. Televised images of napalm, protests, and the Kent State shootings shook the nation. In 1973, America withdrew. 2 years later, Saigon fell. Meanwhile, scandals like Watergate eroded trust in government. Yet even in crisis, America adapted, reformed, and pressed forward. The end of the Cold War. By the 1980s, President Ronald Reagan called the USSR an evil empire. He launched a new arms race and pushed for democracy abroad. But inside the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms weakened the communist grip. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The Cold War ended. America stood as the world's sole superpower. A new era, 9/11 and the War on Terror. The 1990s brought prosperity, the Internet revolution, and globalization. But on September 11, 2001, everything changed. Terrorists hijacked planes, striking the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Nearly 3,000 people were killed. The U.S. declared a war on terror. Troops invaded Afghanistan to dismantle al-Qaeda and overthrow the Taliban. In 2003, America invaded Iraq, toppling Saddam Hussein. But the wars dragged on for years, leaving controversy, sacrifice, and division at home. Modern America. In 2008, America elected its first black president, Barack Obama, a milestone in its long civil rights struggle. His presidency focused on health care reform, economic recovery, and diplomacy. The 2010s saw rapid changes: same-sex marriage legalized, movements like Black Lives Matter rise, and growing polarization in politics. In 2016, Donald Trump's presidency deepened divisions but also redefined America's role on the world stage. By the 2020s, the U.S. faced new challenges: the COVID-19 pandemic, debates over climate change, tensions with China, and internal struggles over democracy itself. The American story: from 13 fragile colonies to a vast republic, from slavery and segregation to civil rights and equality, from world wars to moon landings, from depression to global leadership. America's story is one of contradictions, struggles, and triumphs. It is a nation constantly remaking itself, never perfect, but always striving toward that timeless promise. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And so, the history of America continues, unfinished, ever evolving, and forever watched by the world. Newest, unfinished, ever evolving, and forever watched by the world.